The Arrogant History of White Ben by Clemence, Dane, Chapter 7, Churchyard Mist. Ben was still in the churchyard, reclining luxuriously in a wheelbarrow. The barrow belonged to old George, who had been sexton in his leisure hours. He had made it himself, the legs cut low because of his own bandy legs, piled high with mowings. It was a chair for a prince. Ben was watching the mist, which he loved. It had been his theater entertainment in the old days, as the rain had been his music. He had seen in his time a common mist reach up to the nearest cloud and touch fingers, join hands. In his time he had seen a fiery chariot descend to fetch up the common mist into heaven. But sometimes the mist crawled ignobly over the furrows or lay flat on its belly at his feet. It never spoke to him. The white fog of the churchyard was the most silent of all mists, but its silence was not dead, nor was it the silence of sleep or snow. It shrouded thought. While the moon still rode high, it had lain thinly and without motion over the whole acre, concealing no near outlines, though it thickened behind the yew tree, the two ashes and the row of elms, isolating them from their background. The single light had ruled it as oil rules heaving water. The domination ended. It drifted, spun into whirls, and divided by brooks of air, or flickered up through the dark toward the scattered stars. But the stars were few that night, and had little power. The mist was a fog of earth, and to earth it clung. Ben, however, bringing back his eyes from the stars to the headstones, observed that its nature was changing. Startled, he scrambled up out of his comfortable repose, and, sitting skinnily on the edge of the wheelbarrow, and turning his head from side to side, saw that the mists had ceased to be aimless and formless. They had become white columns, each the memorial of a grave crystalline columns, some tall, some twisted, some mere mounds upon the mounds. Each adhered lightly to the earth, like the thin frill of a mushroom adhering to the morning grass. They were rising all about him, to his left, to his right, buttressing the church walls, ranged in solemn aisles on either side of the paths. He turned to the yew tree, and under its ceiling they stood, thicker than any other part of the garden. Ben thought that if only mist could be chiseled like marble, then these mist columns could be cut very easily into human shapes, simple shapes, their outlines undisturbed by any movement of hand or feature. With sudden resolution, he took a step or two back on the path, for the silence oppressed him. Since he had learnt to talk, there had very swiftly grown up in him the human longing for contact by speech. If the mist will not speak to me, thought Ben, I will go away to the policewoman's house, or even back to young Peddle. Those two talk to me. They want me. Yes, indeed, I have friends. I don't need to stand alone in any acre. But as he limped along the winding footpath between the graves and the stile, one of the columns moved a little and swayed toward him. Another followed, and another, and at once all the solemn figments of the night were swirling about him. Speech they had not, but they enveloped him. They gave him their presence, and that was enough for his half-humanity. He stretched out his arms to the welcome and walked more slowly, lagged till his feet barely moved, while he surrendered to them his harmless and innocent mind, and felt himself impregnated with the woes and the passions of 1,000 obscure years. After a time he began to reel as if he were drunk. At first, indeed, he had fought against the stink of discarded thought, which rose to overturn him exactly as he had fought earlier against the alcohol fumes which had overwhelmed young Peddle. His cool brain knew what was happening to him. Once he had drawn memories into himself from the clothes which he wore. Now he was acquiring other and older memories. He was oppressed by them. There was no warmth, no spring, no kindness in these memories. All were cold and stale and poisoned. They smelt of decay. This field should be plowed, said Ben to himself. But already the poisons were at work in him. He began to think the dead thoughts, feel the dead angers, and burn at the memories of so many accursed wrongs. And yet it was a peculiar torture to him that he could feel in the whirl of emotions to which he surrendered no spark of life. It was no more than a January tossing of leaves, beech husks, and rotten mowings. In all the outcast fuming stuff, there was not one of those qualities which he had loved in his human beings. No humor, no gaiety, no kindness, no love of life, no life whatever. It was as if all that which he had loved had long ago been winnowed away into the bright air. Left behind was a sense of wrong, a need for vengeance. Slowly the wrong possessed him, and the desire for vengeance took possession also. Then at last he heard the mist speak. "Oppression! Oppression!" said the mist. Its voice was thick and multiple, the voice of a river in flood. It spoke in his attuned brain only in thoughts and cryings and unintelligible echoes, but his brain made modern words out of the medley for him to remember and use. "Oppression! Oppression!" said the mist. "I made a good living till the bald man came. Now we starve. Hail Caesar! What does he want new roads for? Beaten with rods. Oppression! The Saxons are devils with horns," wailed the mist. "They beat out the priest's brain. They carried off my woman." Shouts were muffled by the mist. "News! London's fallen on the Danes. Oh, praise God! 2,000 burnt alive. Tell the miller's wife the Danes flung bones at the miller till he died." The mist whispered, "Blinded at Hastings, Harold or William, who cares? The Normans take everything. They've put us down in a book, always oppression. They burnt villages to make the forest. They cut off my dog's paw. I can't pay the fine. Maimed, oppression, oppression. Stephen or Maud, who cares? Pray for me. They tore out my teeth. Who told them I had money? Sold to ransom King Richard. No return. Forgotten." The mist grew garrulous. "The king set fire to the fields with his own hand. Lackland, Lackland, may he lack as we lack. The charter's for the free men, not for us. Oppression, oppression. French Louis or English Harry, who cares? De Montfort hanged my father for guiding them, but what else could he do when they twisted the cord end tight? Hammer the Scots," giggled the mist. "Let the king stay at home and hammer the monks. The monks take everything. I could earn money in town, but they won't let me budge. A hog can shift, but a man mayn't. Killed at Crecy. Mother killed at Crecy. The plague shows under your armpits first. The caterpillars have eaten the oak woods. God sent 'em. Misery! When Adam delivered and Eve span, but they killed poor Wat. He was my wife's cousin, but don't tell or we'll be turned out. Richard or Henry, the taxes are the same, oppression upon oppression." Then the mist began to scream. "Not the fire! I'm no Lollard. I'll say anything. Not the fire, Jesu!" said the mist with 100 voices. "Kill him! He's wearing a red rose. Kill him, he's wearing a white rose. Henry or Crookback, who cares? The women are following camp. The village is as empty as my belly." The mist whined. "When I got home, he had moved the landmark. Easy to bribe Henry Tudor. And Dudley taxes the milk in a woman's breast. Fines, taxes, oppression. Antichrist, shuddered the mist. Follow the Maid of Kent. Better believe what the king believes. My son burned in a barrel of tar for believing what the king believed. Hal can change his mind, but we mayn't. Hal has a son and 2 daughters. The boy's rotting already. And Dudley's son has taken the abbey. Who will nurse us now the nuns are gone? The mist began to mutter. I believe the Holy Catholic Church. Bloody Mary. Inquisition! Inquisition! God save Queen Bess. But old Alice was whipped for saying what we all know. A Child by Robin Dudley. Better an English bastard than a Scotch one. I stood in a white sheet for mine. Oppression, oppression. Please remember the 5th of November. They tied my thumbs and I swam. Oh, kind, cold devil, revenge me on them. Where's the harm in a yellow ruff? There was a gasp and silence, and the mist began again. Hector, protector, was sent to the king. King or parliament, who cares? The Roundheads smashed every window in the church. I held up the great crucifix against them. Brained with the body of God, idols. The king shall enjoy his own again. Treason, oppression, said the patient mist. They cut off my ears. Prison fever. Tyranny, oppression. God save King Monmouth. God save King James. There's Mary the daughter and Willie the cheater. There's Georgie the drunkard and Annie the eater. But we starve. Again the mist complained. They've enclosed the common. Where shall I graze my cow? Men for the Duke. Money for the Duke. Blenheim for the Duke. But we starve. Put a curse on him. That's no familiar. That's my poor Tib. Defy you all. They laid bars of iron on my legs. Take off, take off. The mist eluded the scream. A new voice cried out. Whipped for a vagrant. I put up a hovel in the lane and thatched it with moss. They pulled it over my ears. Now where am I to go? But the mist answered only, oppression, oppression, cried the mist. Charlie is my darling, Charlie or Geordie, who cares? Hanged for stealing a sheep. Look out, the press gang, flogged round the fleet and his back pickled with salt. Give us our 11 days in justice. No popery, oppression. The mist gathered force. The rights of a man. They've chopped off the French king's head. We did that once to a king, not so loud. They say Boney's landed in Romney Marsh. Transported for poaching. Britons never shall be slaves. They put the boys and girls down the mines with the blind ponies. Repeal, repeal. What's the good when there's no corn to sell? Sow for beans to make your row. One to rot and one to grow. One for the rook and one for the crow. But Squire won't cut down the rookery, so I'm going to seek my fortune oversea. He left his old mother to starve, he did. Break the machines. Then the mist began to sing hoarsely. God save our gracious queen. God, long live our noble queen. Hanged at 14 for stealing a watch. Fever. Soup. Blankets. A soldier is not a remitting animal. The rents are all put up. Call it a village hall. You won't get me into his cattle shed. The ungrateful poor. 3 years for stealing a bicycle. The rabbits are a pest. Put down poaching with a firm hand. What's the workhouse for? 60 glorious years. Starvation. Poor boor. Bloody pauper. Pass the hat for your credit's sake. I don't want charity. I want a job. The mist began again. 18 shillings a week. 7 children. What do they want to vote for? Dumping. Emigration. Unemployment. Oppression.